Everybody, welcome to the show. Around the Nation right here, TYT Nation. I'm Jeff Waldorf. I am here today with the one and only Ron Placone. Hey, Ron, how's it going,
Jeff?
man?
How are you?
Doing great. It's well, we had a good day, but tomorrow it's going to be a really shitty day.
We'll see. I mean, I'm kind of.
I don't know. I don't have any faith.
I'm holding out hope that we might get some last minute good news. I mean, now,
Maybe.
I mean, David Sirota just tweeted an article. A bunch of Republicans sent AG Pye a letter urging him to delay the vote. So, and then again, and of course, like a lot of powerful entities can probably take this thing to court, and it would be really tough for the court to go against net neutrality.
Yeah,
and I know the court, having to rely on the court's not the best place to be in. But it'd be tough for them to go against the grain of rules that have pretty much been around since 2005. So I don't know. We'll see. I mean, obviously, it's not. I'm a little nervous about tomorrow too.
I am, yeah.
But I'm not giving up hope that there's gonna be some last minute good news. I'm not counting on it either. But I'm trying to not freak out,
Yeah, well, taking Jimmy Dore's advice, don't freak out.
Right, don't freak out. Yeah. So we'll see. And you know what? Worst case scenario, if we do lose net neutrality, the fight then becomes tomorrow trying to get municipal internet in your community.
Absolutely.
And that's a fight we can all have, right? I mean, that involves going to your city council meeting. I already called my city council person where I live. And, I'm hoping at the start of the new year to start attending some meetings, get some proposals out there, no matter what happens. Because, let's say we do preserve net neutrality in the short run, this fight's going to come up again. So
and look, absolutely. Like, even if we win the net neutrality fight, which we thought we did back in 2015, we should have been fighting for municipal internet anyway. Because in the places where we have it, it's faster, it's cheaper, it's better. No giant corporation running it, and no having to worry about whether they're going to stick to the principles of net neutrality rules or not.
Yeah, because it belongs to the public, which is what the internet should be at this point. I mean, the internet
was created by the public.
It is like running water,
Yeah, a Humanist Report, Mike Figueredo. I'm sorry, I can't say his name very well. Great guy. He said something really interesting. He's like, it is time now to basically recognize information, access to information, because that's what this really is, the internet, as a human right. I absolutely am 100% on board with him on that one. So it's time. It's time. Win or lose the net neutrality fight, it's time. They push back. They push us right. We push back even harder to the left.
Yeah,
they punch us, we punch them back twice. In a figurative sense.
So, yeah, I mean, tomorrow's going to be... I'm nervous. Don't get me wrong.
I'm super nervous.
I'm nervous, and I know you're nervous. And
I'm a cynical motherfucker.
like us too, Jeff. I mean, it's our livelihoods at stake, too.
It really is.
It's more than just, oh, man, we're going to get price gouged more for the internet. It's like, oh, our jobs might not exist anymore. We might not be able to do our jobs anymore, which is, not an easy place to be, but But I have a feeling we're gonna find a way out of this. I really do. No matter what happens, I have a feeling there's too many powerful people on the side of net neutrality who are our unlikely allies, and there's too many there's just too much of a tech savvy world at this point that we're just gonna sit by and let ISPs gut our internet.
Let's hope, man. I do hope you're right. Again, I have the cynicism. But look, something I'm going to get to later on today is Roy Moore. I was wrong about Roy Moore. I thought Alabama was going to vote for him. I thought it was going to be a close race because the polling suggested a close race. But I was like, no, they're going to vote in the pedophile. We're going to have a child molester representing the great state of Alabama.
Right.
Hey, and you know what?
I was surprised too. I expected Roy Moore to win. And Doug Jones pulled it off. And I'll be honest, Jeff, I am happy Doug Jones won. I'm happy about it. However, I also, I also understand that, Doug Jones is not necessarily a candidate to get excited about.
He's not a huge progressive, is what.
No, not at all. And centrism is, now I know people were saying there were reports on NPR this morning. They're saying, oh, so Democrats won in Alabama. They need to go more to the right. Centrism is the answer. Look, centrism is not the answer. When you go from a party that couldn't beat Donald Trump to a party that can barely edge out a pedophile. Okay, that doesn't mean you're slaying it when you can barely edge out a pedophile. I said this about a little over a month ago, or I guess longer ago than that, a fair while ago. I said that I would never vote for anybody that doesn't support single payer. I'm just not going to give them my vote if they don't support single payer. And if there was an imaginary contrarian sitting next to me, they would have been like, well, what if you have to vote for somebody because otherwise a pedophile gets in office? Would you make an exception? And I would probably be like, yeah, I would, but I don't think that hypothetical would ever come to pass. Sure enough.
Oops.
If I lived in the state of Alabama, I would have been making that compromise where it's like, yes, I will vote for someone that doesn't support single payer because Doug Jones does not. I will vote for someone that doesn't support single payer because otherwise a pedophile is going to get in office. And it's very sad.
Congratulations. Congratulations on lowering the bar, Democrats.
Right.
Real low.
We fixed everything. We can beat a pedophile by 1.5% points. We're the party of the people now.
Centrism is back, baby.
Yeah.
Are you sure? Look at those poll results.
So anyway.
Anyway, that is the world we live in. Speaking of centrism, we do have our segment that we want to talk about. And this is the DNC Unity Reform Commission. So last weekend, the DNC Unity Reform Commission had its final meeting to work on basically reforming the Democratic Party. I mean, that's what they are. Now, here with me, of course, is Ron Placone, here to discuss the changes, and then we're going to talk about, is this enough? Is this even going to happen? And I already know your answer, Ron, but let's not spoil it for the audience. So I want to discuss a couple of the changes. Let's start with superdelegates, right? So superdelegates, obviously a huge problem, incredibly undemocratic inside the Democratic Party, which makes absolutely no sense. The Republican Party at this point is actually more Democratic when they run a primary than the Democratic Party. So, I mean, that's a big problem. When you're actually ceding ground to the Republicans and saying that, hey, man, look, they have a more democratic nomination process. Yes, that nomination process did bring us Trump, to be fair. And you can use that as an argument against it. But, look, there's no reason that the Democratic Party needs to hand over control of the nomination process to lobbyists and party insiders that are always going to vote for the establishment. So a lot of us were pissed off about it. I mean, I was pissed off about superdelegates. I know you were. Jimmy Dore was as well. And all of us progressives, we looked at that system and we said, that's got to change. So in this reform commission, they proposed a new system. It says, this is according to BuzzFeed, the superdelegates who are elected officials and distinguished party leaders would remain unpledged delegates. In 2016, that group numbered about 280 people, according to Vox. The rest, DNC members, there's about 447, would keep the title of superdelegates, but their votes would be bound proportionally to the vote count in their states in the first ballot of voting at the convention. In the case of a second ballot, all superdelegates would be unbound. This proposal would effectively eliminate about 60% of all superdelegates, though not in name. So, and it goes on to say that some DNC members were joking about how they wanted to keep their fucking lanyard. I don't really care about that. Whatever. 60% of superdelegates gone. It's not all of them, but it is a reduction. Your thoughts, Ron?
So, the acceptable number of superdelegates is 0.
0.
That's the acceptable number. I'm glad that the Unity Commission is going on, and I applaud a lot of the people that are doing the work for it. We talked to Nomiki Konst in studio yesterday. I
She's
applaud
awesome.
her for her efforts. I applaud her for having that video go viral. And I think those efforts are very important. By no means would I ever try to diminish those or say that they're not incredibly important. They are. However, there was an episode of South Park a long time ago where they were critiquing the Catholic Church. And this, of course, was back when, there were a lot of instances of pedophilia in the news and stuff like that within the Catholic Church. And there's this
Now they're just in Congress, or now they're just running for Congress.
Right. So, and there was this one priest, and he was, kind of like the good guy, right, in the cartoon. And he goes to the Vatican, and they're talking about all these things they have to do, how they have to cover it up and this and that, and how they have to turn to their Bibles and turn to the almighty spider and all this other stuff. And then the priest says, how about we just not have sex with kids? And everybody goes, what? No, we can't do it. And that's what I think of when I look at the DNC. Like, how about we just have an honest democratic process? What? No, we can't do that.
That is a bridge too far.
People what they want. No, we can't do that. We get to keep some of the super delegates. And I have a feeling when this comes to the vote, they're going to shoot it down. They're going to be like, well, why don't we just keep the super delegates? We can't just keep some of them and not all of them. Or they're going to say, well, we'll keep this amount of the super delegates, but they get to vote however the hell they want. They can screw over their voting populace if they feel like it. I have a feeling that's kind of what's going to happen. I don't have very much confidence in the DNC making these extensive changes. I don't think they're interested in changing. And I also don't think, and honestly, I think they're going to use this Alabama thing. I think they're going to spin it to their advantage. They're going to say, hey, clearly centrism's working because we were able to beat a pedophile by 1.5 points. So, yeah, I don't see the reforms happening. I really hope I'm wrong, but
I hope I'm wrong as well.
I have a feeling they're not going to happen.
So you're obviously the more cynical person in this one. That's normally my job. Why you got to muscle in my territory, dude? It's not cool.
Hey, man, just
but
I judge future behavior on past behavior, whatever that phrase is.
Yeah, look, I largely agree with you. The correct number of superdelegates is nothing. I did a video, I think, earlier this week, maybe last week, where I talked about, like, oh, they're going to get rid of some of the superdelegates? Well, great. We're going to have more gradual change and then, call it mission accomplished. No, that's not how you get change. You get change by having radical change. And again, this is not to, just like you said, it's not really to cast a negative light on all the hard work put in by people like Nomiki Konst who were on there, who made passionate arguments. But what they're working against is a system that is stacked against progress, which is stacked against change. It is for the status quo. So right now you have the DNC that's filled with people who love the status quo, who are only there because of the status quo. So they're going to be really hard pressed to change it. Now, where I'm a little less cynical than you is I think that if we still, as people, as voters, put enough pressure onto the DNC and keep following it, because, again, they can't really do this in daylight, right? They want to make sure that we forget about it, that we're not paying attention, and that's when they can go and fuck us over. If we pay attention, they might not be able to do that, at least not openly.
I don't think enough people are paying attention, to be honest with you.
And that's what we need to change.
The only people really paying attention to the reform efforts are the people that really want to see the reform. Progressives like you and I. And the DNC has thumbed their nose at us every single opportunity they've had. And look at the things that the commission is asking for. Transparency in where the money goes.
That's really important.
They shouldn't even need to request that, though. It's sad that they need to request that. And an actual democratic process from the Democratic Party, where they're not even conceding to all of it. They're giving us some of it. They're like, let us be able to still cheat a little bit. We want a little bit of cheating left. And so, yeah, the acceptable number of superdelegates is 0. I think they're going to use this as a pawn to at least allow the remaining superdelegates to vote the way they want to, or worse, they're going to use it as an argument to just keep the superdelegates around. I think they're going to thumb their nose at the transparency argument because they're going to say that, oh, well, the DNC, we're doing better with fundraising, the Democrats are on the rise, and blah, blah, blah. They're going to do the mealy-mouth mental gymnastics to kind of get out of all this, or at least that's what they're going to try to do.
That's why I hope that there's going to be enough of us to hold them to account. I still believe in the power of people to apply pressure. It's just we have to get, the people that are constantly out there fighting, that have been organizing and doing all this grassroots stuff for change, they still need to be mobilized. We all still need to be mobilized. We all still need to fight. But there's more. There's more changes than this to superdelegates. One is a measure to require absentee ballots in caucuses. So, look, for me, I didn't like the caucus system. I know, like, a lot of people are like, oh, it favored Bernie Sanders. And actually, he did very well in caucuses, right? I'm more for primaries, open primaries, which means you open it up to everybody. You have same-day registration, or better yet, automatic voter registration. So you don't even have to worry about registering. You already are. And you can go and take place in a primary. This idea for absentee ballots.
I strongly favor open primaries too, but I gotta admit, when I did caucus, because I lived in a caucus state before, I lived in Washington State.
Right.
I did really like the experience.
Yeah.
I just thought the experience was really cool. It was really like community driven. I think it really motivated people to want to get involved. Now, of course, I completely favor open primaries and opening the primaries up.
Yeah.
But if they made like an easier voting efforts and made like maybe caucuses more open too, I don't know. I'm
well,
obviously open primaries is my first desire.
Yeah.
I just sometimes when it comes to caucusing, I'm a little more against the grain just because I had a really positive experience caucusing, and I see how that could be a very good tool to get more people into politics.
I totally see that.
Maybe my experience was, like exceptional or whatever, but overall I favor open primaries above all else, and I favor that above all else. I just maybe have a slightly more positive view on caucusing than one might expect somebody like me to have.
Well, look, I can understand because you had that experience in person. The problem with caucuses is that you kind of have to be able to get there in person,
right,
to be able to experience. That's why I actually like this idea of absentee ballots in caucuses. So if you can't be there, at least you can make sure that your voice is heard inside the caucus. I actually think that's a really good fix to that. If we're going to have a caucus system, let people send in an absentee ballot so they can get counted, even if they have to work or they have family concerns or anything like that, or just can't make it to the caucus process. So that's actually super positive. I don't see why anybody would be against that. All right.
Agreed.
There's more making vote counts public that would benefit candidates apparently who do not meet the viability threshold in each caucus, meaning they do not receive support from 15% of caucus attendees and are therefore disqualified. So this would help small-time candidates who aren't very well known. I think that that's definitely an idea that came from the progressive side, saying, hey, you know what? Sometimes we have these candidates that are not very well known, that are running against far more established candidates, and we don't want to see them completely get ignored and disqualified in caucuses just because nobody knows who they are yet. So I think that's also a pretty good idea. And other proposals include same-day voter and party registration at the caucuses, as well as requiring that votes are cast in writing at caucuses to basically ensure accountability. That's also really good. I like that. We touched on open primaries. That's another thing that they were talking about. But also they were talking about states that have party registrations. So maybe opening up registration, changing the rules, for example, in New York that make you have to register at least 6 months in advance. I thought it was a year. Apparently, it's only 6 months, so that's my mistake on that. But having to register that far into the future, that's a bit of a problem, especially when you have a surprise candidate like we had in 2016 with Bernie Sanders. So I would definitely have that kind of, I definitely support that kind of change. I think that's a pretty good idea, and I'm not against that. And then, of course, the joint fundraising campaign, making that available to all candidates. I would rather us get all the corporate money out of politics, all the money out of politics, period. Publicly financed elections. But if you're going to work within the framework of the system that we have, I guess. Here's an interesting rule. They proposed a rule to prohibit vendors and consultants from working for a campaign at the DNC at the same time in scenarios where there might be a dispute. So we saw that all through the 2016 campaign. Donna Brazil's book revealed that as well as, WikiLeaks. All these different documents have shown that, hey, wait a minute, these consultant groups are also working for the DNC, and they're working for Hillary Clinton as well. You can't have that. You can't do that. Obviously, it favors one candidate far more over the other. So, yeah, I'm in favor of prohibiting that. I don't know how well that's going to go over with, because as Noiki Konst pointed out, a lot of the power, if not all the power, is basically placed in 5 different consultants that are essentially running the party. And that's why we don't have transparency when it comes to the budgetary process. That's why Donna Brazil had no idea where the money was going, because it was going to these 5 consultants who basically were hiding the results. Like, no, I'm not going to let you see the money. Only the party chair can see the money, right?
Yeah, well, and they were using it for their own gains, too.
Absolutely.
I mean, they were paying these consultants at times when they weren't supposed to be. Obama did some of that. So, yeah, I mean, there's... again, I'm all about, like, all this stuff, that the Reform Commission is calling for. I think a lot of it's sad that they need to request this stuff. I mean, it's sad that in a major party in the United States, we need to just ask for some transparency in the budget.
Would be nice,
that stuff should already be available. That stuff should be available to the public. And I think it's sad that we need to ask for just a democratic process in our nominations procedure. But we do, and I have a feeling it's going to be shot down.
Yeah, that's what I want to talk about. Like, a lot of these are pretty good. We disagree with the obviously the superdelegates. We want to get rid of all the superdelegates. Yes. So that right there, I believe that's going to get shot down. The transparency with the budgetary process inside the DNC also going to get shot down. I do see a couple of these being changes, because look, you know how the Democratic Party works. You have a few small changes on the outside and continuity on the inside. That's and then they go and they tout these small changes, which are good, right? And they go, historic reform. We have changed the DNC. Come on back in, millennials. Come on back in, progressives, and vote for our centrist candidates.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty good analysis, because, I mean, they do have every incentive to do whatever would make voting itself easier. I mean, when there's higher voter turnout, Democrats pretty much always win, versus Republicans. So, they would have every incentive to, open up open primaries, could hurt them on the on the primary level because of, progressives winning more. But... a lot of that stuff, they have no reason not to say yes to a lot of it. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's going to be all A or B where they're just going to completely shoot it down. But, as far as the big bullet points, I don't see it happen. I don't see the superdelegates going anywhere.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't see them being much more ethical or transparent with the money. Those are the 2 biggest bullet points, and I don't see either of them happening.
Yeah, I think you and I are definitely in agreement on those 2 big bullet points. But we'll have to see when they actually do the voting. It's going to be about 6 months from now, which is nice because nobody's going to be paying attention. So we've got to keep, look, when the voting is set to begin, we're going to definitely have to come back and do a segment and remind people like, hey, this is going on tomorrow. This is what they're going to vote on. And we need to pay attention. We need to pressure them to try and do the right thing. Because if nobody's paying attention, then of course they're going to do the wrong thing. Just like they always do.
Amen.
All right. That's it. Thanks, Ron.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man.
Great discussion.
Yeah, thank you as always. Thank you, everybody over at TYT Nation. Please follow me on Twitter at Ron Placone and patreon.com/Ron Placone. If you are so able, I do a pay what you can tier. So any tier you give at, you get all the same content. I do an exclusive podcast, exclusive videos, writings. You get my book and my album delivered to your inbox when they're done, and you can get free tickets to a show if I'm in your town. So it's pretty cool thing. If you are so inclined and able, please do consider it. Thank you, Jeff, for having me.
Thanks, Ron. We'll see you again next week. All right. So, don't go anywhere. We've got a lot more show for you guys today. We're going to talk about Roy Moore, Omarosa, as well as a lot of other fun stuff. So stay right here. We'll be right back in just a moment. Back and around the nation, right here, TYT Nation, Jeff Waldorf with you. Before we get to the rest of the segments, I want to remind everybody, please give us a like and a share if you haven't already. It helps the show. Also, I want to thank the patrons, patreon.com/TYT Nation. You guys are awesome. You help keep the show going. And if we lose net neutrality, your help is going to be instrumental in keeping us afloat. So, all right. That said, let's get to the stories. Let's have some fun and talk about Omarosa. Big news of the day. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, we got her. Down goes Omarosa. Down goes Omarosa. According to The Hill, senior White House aide Omarosa Manigault Newman, the former star of the initial season of The Apprentice and longtime supporter of President Trump, is leaving the White House next month. She is out. Her resignation is effective January 20th, according to White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders, telling the Associated Press. Now, Manigault Newman apparently serves as Director of Communications for the White House Office of Public Liaison, a position that means little to nothing. Again, I don't know what she's actually there to do, because she has done literally nothing. Again, the last time I talked about Omarosa was to try to determine what the hell she was actually doing in the White House, what she was paid to do in the White House. This was not a free volunteer position. This was a paid West Wing position. Now, in my search, I've still not figured it out, and I'm not alone. Nobody could figure it out. Now, she walked around basically, according to a Daily Beast article, where somebody actually went and shadowed her for a day. And all she did was talk to different advisors and occasionally would come out and criticize other black people, like the Congressional Black Caucus. Wow. This is a paid position, right? Oh, and one more thing. She also planned a wedding while she was on the job. Elena Plott wrote about this in the Daily Beast. After following her around, And when she tried to do a second, I guess, interview with her or to actually follow her around again for another day, she was ghosted. I love it. Now she writes, quote, ultimately, in my quest to better understand what exactly Omarosa does each day, I learned little more than the fact that she was getting married. She also, Plot had also called a Republican source in constant contact with the White House and asked what they thought Omarosa's job entailed. No clue, the source said. I told the source about our whirlwind of a morning, and they replied, wait, Hope Hicks let you follow Omarosa around? No, I hadn't spoken with Hope, who now serves formally as the White House Communications Director. So Sean Spicer let you? Ditto. Christ, the source said. No one in the comms department knew a random reporter was walking around the West Wing. This is why people think we're a shit show. And to be fair, people still think that. Now, I want to remind you that she made $179,000 a year in this position for doing absolutely nothing. Nothing. Now, there was even an earlier report about Omarosa and the time before John Kelly. So, yes, at the time Plot went and talked to her, she was doing nothing. That was after John Kelly had taken over. Now, multiple sources in and outside the White House told the Daily Beast that until recently it was common practice for aides to slide into the Oval Office and distract and infuriate the president with pieces of negative news coverage. Manigault, they say, was one of the worst offenders. The stories Manigault would present to Trump, often on a phone or printed out, would often enrage the president and resulted in him spending at least the rest of the day fuming about it. For example, one White House source noted that Manigault was one of the people who would bring to the President Trump's attention online articles concerning MSNBC hosts and former Trump pals Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski, slagging him and his administration. So that's what she did for a while. John Kelly came in and he said, okay, we're going to put a stop to that after he took over, as chief of staff, as Reince Priebus went the fuck out the door to go drink Bailey's on his cereal. One White House source said of this transition, quote, she's not happy about it. She has a bond that goes back years with Trump and resents being cut off like everyone has. So in all that time, all she achieved was basically fueling Trump's Twitter storms against the media. And when that was put a stop to, she basically had nothing else to do. Because she had no job, all she was doing is she was basically being rewarded for being President Trump's friend. That's it. So why is she going then? I mean, it's a perfect job, right? You go in, you get paid, you do nothing. What's not to like about it? Well, okay. I have an interesting theory about this, and it might have to do with the Russia investigation. I think the entire White House is falling apart from the inside out. Even if you have nothing to do with that investigation, and I'm pretty sure Manigault has absolutely nothing to do with Russia, absolutely knows nothing about it, right? But you don't want to be swept up in that. Or there's another theory, and that's John Kelly finally got his way and forced her out because, again, she was literally doing nothing. And all the, people like McConnell and all the McConnell aides, people who were close to the establishment Republicans, were like, what is she even doing here? We got to get rid of her, so let's force her out. That's my read of the situation. I don't know quite what happened to make her leave, but I can say one thing, or maybe two things. Bye, Felicia. Okay. I felt like I had to fit that in. Okay. So let's go from Omarosa to the next story, and that is Roy Moore. Okay. Now, I believe I owe the good people of Alabama a bit of an apology. Last night, Doug Jones defeated Roy Moore in what was, in my opinion, way too close of a race. Doug Jones beat Roy Moore by just 1.5 percentage points. Now, that is, of course, thanks to the massive turnout by the African American community, and that cannot be overstated. So, hey, look, black people saved our ass once again. Now, I want to break this down by demographic, by the way, since I'm talking about that. And this will make you very sad if you're a progressive. According to exit polling, 56% of male voters went for Roy Moore, while 41% of female voters did the same. Jones picked up pretty much the opposite of those numbers. 57% of females, 42% of males. I don't think that really adds up, but broken down by race and sex, Moore won 72% of white men and 63% of white women, while Jones picked up about 93% of black men and 98% of black women. So black people, again, literally saved the day. And this is also while having to go through reports of massive voter suppression, so that were aimed at keeping African Americans from the polls. So these people, they're willing to stand in line for hours, bring every sort of available ID to the polls so that they can make sure that Roy Moore, who is an absolute racist and wants to get rid of the amendment that eliminated slavery and made sure that they were treated like citizens, as well as giving the women the right to vote, they stood in line making sure to protect the country from someone like that getting actual power. So, you know, on them, I think Doug Jones's victory definitely was carried by the African American community. Now, this is even more sad. White people, even college-educated white people, also voted for Moore in high numbers. That amazes me because they have no excuse. They're literally smarter than this. 62% of white men with college degrees ended up voting for a theocratic corporatist who was also an alleged child molester. These are the people that are like, you know what, I may be educated, but I really am stupid. I don't care about facts, logic, and reason anymore whatsoever. I just don't care. Wonderful. 52% of educated white women also voted for Roy Moore, even again with all the sexual harassment and assault allegations. Again, these people are saying, I don't care. I don't care about facts. I don't care about logic. I don't care about reason. I don't even care about decency, basic human decency. I'm going to vote for Roy Moore anyway. Wonderful. And of course, those same numbers are higher among non-college educated whites. Hey, fellow white people, what the fuck? The fuck is wrong with you? You're going to vote for Roy Moore? You really? Look, Doug Jones ain't nobody's progressive, okay? He's not a super progressive person. So you couldn't vote for that? It's not like you're voting for, you know, well, maybe you are, because they are a little bit more aligned with Nancy Pelosi than anything. But you're not voting for like a democratic socialist. Maybe you'd be more open to voting for democratic socialist, to be honest with you. But you're not voting for some crazy person. You are if you're voting for Roy Moore. Let me amend that. If you vote for Roy Moore, you are voting for a crazy person. So what the fuck is wrong with you? Why? I know it's Alabama. I know people are very, very conservative there. I know they're worried about abortion. I think that's the main issue that drives a lot of voters to voting for Republicans. But look, the lies about progressives, the lies about Democrats when it comes to, you know, abortion rights are absolutely ridiculous. And people need to actually go and look at the facts. You know, I saw some ads are talking about Doug Jones being in favor of partial birth abortions right up to the day where you're supposed to give birth. No, that's not a thing that actually happens. But the level of propaganda that you see in this race from the right wing is astounding. And you have these people that are single issue voters that go in and they believe everything they hear about it, despite the facts. And people who are college educated should know better. Even if you're pro-life, supposed pro-life, anti-abortion, all that stuff, you should at least be tuned in to real information and facts about this. Like, hey, I don't like it, and I don't want to see it happen. Oh, but here are the better ways to make sure that it doesn't happen. Actually go in and make sure that everybody has proper sexual education, access to birth control, family planning, et cetera, so that we can actually reduce the numbers of abortion instead of banning it. And they make the argument that if you ban guns, people are still going to get guns. Well, if you ban abortions, people are still going to get abortions. So what's the point? Anyway, look, Roy Moore, again, aside from the racism, aside from the sexism, aside from being a theocrat, right, who wants to go and get rid of all the amendments from 11 to 27, including things that are very, very important, like the rights for certain people to be able to vote. I guess there are some Republicans that don't actually care about that, but the right for everybody to be treated equally and fairly under the law. Aside from that, Roy Moore would have been a very, I guess, I can't think of the word here, a reliable Republican vote, meaning he would vote for the GOP tax cuts that are going to take money out of your pocket and give it to the rich. That's what Roy Moore actually stands for. And yet he was barely defeated by Doug Jones. Now, again, Doug Jones, no progressive, but he did prosecute the KKK, and that was kind of awesome. But other than that, he's not for Medicare for all. He's not for anything like that. So to me, this kind of feels like what would have happened in 2016 without the Electoral College. And it's kind of what it was. A sort of uninspiring, centrist type of candidate that was up against a monster. And he barely eked out a win with the popular vote. This was too close. Way too close. I understand that, look, we need a win, and we should take the win, okay? Take the win, yes, absolutely. But we also should realize that in today's discourse, it's a lot crazier than it was back in the day. Back maybe 10 years ago, maybe even more. This would have been unfathomable. This kind of monster would have been shut down by a huge, huge margin. This should have never been this close. But then again, somebody like Trump winning, that never should have happened either. I remember back when saying that 47% of Americans are moochers was enough to cost you an election. Or a scream would make you lose a primary. Or a sigh would let you lose a debate. We are far, far beyond that, and I don't see us going back. So, look, if Democrats want to keep winning, and we're already starting to see the spin, oh, centrism is back, that's why he beat Roy Moore by a 1.5%. No. We're seeing the DNC and Tom Perez, we're seeing them take credit for this. That is not the lesson that we should take from this. We have to thank the people on the ground, obviously the organizers, and mainly black voters who stood in line despite massive voter suppression efforts to keep them from going to the polls. We need to thank them, and more importantly, we need to give them more of a voice inside of the progressive movement. This isn't the win of the DNC. This isn't a win of Perez. This isn't a win for centrism. This is a win for organization. And a huge loss, of course, for an alleged pedophile. So, there's a lot of lessons that you can take from this race. I think those, however, are the biggest ones. We should continue to get more progressive in our candidates. Because you think about it, somebody like that's even more progressive, that actually talked about more of some of the issues facing Alabama, whom the UN is now looking into as an example of extreme poverty. Those are the issues we should be talking about. Those are the issues we should focus on. And those are not the issues that Doug Jones ran on. He ran on, I'm not Roy Moore. I'm not an alleged pedophile. And that was just barely enough to get him a win. But we can't keep relying on that sort of strategy. We do need to go left. We do need to continue to talk about the issues. And look, and I keep going back to this amusing tweet where somebody said, I can't wait for a few months for us to start complaining about Doug Jones being not progressive. That's the way it's going to go, man. I can see it now. All right. Let's move on. Steve Bannon. Oh, I love Steve Bannon. Making fun of him, that is. All right. So last night there was a victory in deep red Alabama. African Americans overwhelmingly voted for Doug Jones and actually helped to secure a very narrow victory against an alleged pedophile, Roy Moore. Republicans, oh man, they are not happy about it. Now, the Wall Street Journal published an editorial but that was very interesting, actually, because who they're blaming for this loss is Steve Bannon. Now, they're not blaming the pedophile. No, they're blaming Steve Bannon. Hilarious. Now, this editorial was called, had in it, the Alabama, let me read you a quote. The Alabama result shows that Mr. Bannon cares less about conservative policy victories than he does personal king-making. He wants to depose Mitch McConnell as majority leader, even if it costs Republican Senate control. GOP voters take note. Mr. Bannon is for losers. Losers. Damn. So that's pretty strong. Now, adding to that is Representative Peter King. Now, he lashed out on Twitter early Wednesday morning, tweeting this, quote, "After Alabama disaster, GOP must do the right thing and dump Steve Bannon. His act is tired, inane, and morally vacuous. If we are to make America great again for all Americans, Bannon must go, and go now." He also said this on CNN's New Day. Watch.
This guy does not belong on the national stage. He looks like some disheveled drunk that wandered onto the political stage. He does not represent anything that I stand for. I consider myself a conservative Republican. I consider myself an Irish Catholic. And he sort of parades himself out there with his weird alt-right views that he has. And to me, it's demeaning the whole governmental and political process. This summer, I called on the president to fire him from the, from the White House. And I think last night in Alabama was not just a political statement. That was really just a revulsion by people at his style, at his type of divisive views, which were the political and governmental, whether he was involved in the White House trying to undercut the president on his foreign policy, whether he encourages racial division. This is not the type of person we need in politics. And last night's election was a manifestation of a revulsion by the American people.
Peter King, I know where you're from, and I know you like to knuckle up every now and then, but did you just call Steve Bannon a disheveled drunk?
No, to be very precise, I said he looks like one.
Now, you know that them's fighting words when it comes to Steve Bannon. Is that a fight that you want to take on?
I have no problem. Listen, you have to fight for what's right. And again, he's attacking the president's daughter the other night when he took a shot at Ivanka Trump by mocking her expression, your special place in hell. This person, to me, Bannon, does not belong on the American political scene. And there's nothing there that I identify with, and there's nothing there that really, to me, good Republicans or good Americans should identify with.
Okay, boy, that's a load of bullshit. No, of course that his ideology is just yours to an extreme. But I love it. Did you just call Steve Bannon a disheveled drunk? Oh, well, no, I said he looks like one. No, he's a disheveled drunk. Allegedly, at least, he looks like a disheveled drunk. And this is a guy, by the way, who claims that he is superior to different groups of people. That face, man. Ain't no way. I'm just saying. You want to throw stones, you got a glass house. Anyway, now we have more. Meghan McCain on Twitter tweeted, quote, "Suck it, Bannon." That's pretty clear. Rich Laurie, the editor of the Conservative National Review, said the Republican defeat in Alabama should be a lesson to other states where Bannon, quote, wants to run a fringy candidate. You also have Josh Holmes, the former chief of staff and campaign director for Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, tweeted out, before we get the results, I just want to thank Steve Bannon for showing us how to lose the reddest state in the union, and Governor Ivey for the opportunity to make this national embarrassment a reality. Again, super strong words. The Senate Leadership Fund also released a statement blaming Bannon for the loss. Quote, this is a brutal reminder that candidate quality matters regardless of where you are running. Not only did Steve Bannon cost us a critical Senate seat in one of the most Republican states in the country, but he also dragged the President of the United States into this fiasco. So, this is the part of the show where I will actually sort of defend Steve Bannon. So, you see they have turned their circular firing squad on Steve Bannon, right? Who is basically the logical, I should say, extension of conservative ideology, right? Now, he's got more of a somewhat, you could call it a populist, so he tries to mix some economic populism and some nationalism in with his racism and calls it conservatism, right? So that's what he's trying to do. Now, the Republicans, they don't like any of that economic populism. Again, he did call for higher taxes on the rich. That is something that not a lot of people talk about on the right, except when they say use it as an excuse to lower taxes on the rich. But look, I'm going to call bullshit on that Senate Leadership Fund statement. Trump, he didn't get dragged into this. No. President Trump jumped into this. He had a full-throated endorsement of Roy Moore. Oh, but Jeff, didn't he support Luther Strange in the primary? Well, yeah, because he actually did listen to his advisors and Republicans like Mitch McConnell, but he wasn't happy about it. Let me give you some points here. Trump initially supported Luther Strange in the primary, and this according to Talking Points memo. Trump had endorsed the losing primary candidate, Strange, partly at the request of Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and the White House political staff, but also partly because he felt, he owed Strange for his loyalty while serving in an interim capacity as Alabama's junior senator. An unnamed senior White House official told CNN of Trump's decision to endorse Strange that the president, quote, knew it was a mistake, but one he was willing to make because Luther was loyal. So, again, he didn't support Luther Strange at the beginning, okay, but he's like, you know what? I'm going to support him anyway because he's loyal, but I really like what this Roy Moore guy is talking about. I think he's going to make America great again, but what am I going to do? I reward people who are loyal to me. And I don't know this Roy Moore guy yet. Now, multiple sources, according to CNN, said Trump was also furious with McConnell and feels outdone by his former aide Bannon for the fact that Luther Strange had lost to Roy Moore because he didn't realize how vicious his voters actually are in Alabama in the primary. Now, after the primary vote, Trump deleted tweets in support of the losing candidate, replacing them with moderate praise for the chosen Republican. He said, congratulations to Roy Moore on his Republican primary win in Alabama. Luther Strange started way back and ran a good race. Roy, win in December. And then another tweet, spoke to Roy Moore of Alabama last night for the first time. Sounds like a really great guy who ran a fantastic race. He will help to MAGA, make America great again. Now, I'm giving you all that context so that I can tell you about a tweet the president put out earlier this morning. Basically, he's like, you know what, Moore, I was right about Moore. You guys should have supported Strange. Quote, the reason I originally endorsed Luther Strange and his numbers went up mightily is that I said Roy Moore will not be able to win in the general election. I was right. Roy worked hard, but the deck was stacked against him. Wait a minute. You said no such thing. No, you were mad. Like, that you had to endorse him and Luther Strange and that he lost, right? The only thing you care about is winning. And so if it's a loss, you're like, oh my God, It's your fault. It's not my fault. It must be someone else's fault. I only endorse Strange because they told him to. They told me to. My advisor was Mitch McConnell. I'm so mad at Mitch McConnell. How dare you? I said Strange was going to win, though. I said Roy Moore was going to lose. Well, then why'd you endorse him? Now, why'd you have a huge endorsement of him? A tweet after tweet. I believe you did a commercial for him or a robocall. Come on, man. Really? And then why'd you delete the tweets about Luther Strange? Why get pissed at McConnell for asking you to support him? Why? It's because you can't stand being wrong. No, I wasn't wrong. I said Roy Moore was going to lose the entire time. Or, whatever. Right? And look, the race was close, right? And me personally, I can admit when I get things wrong. I actually thought Roy Moore was going to win. I thought the Alabama voters were going to be so barbaric as to vote in somebody like Roy Moore. Turns out I was wrong, barely, because it was only a 1.5% victory. It should have been far more. But I'm actually happy to be wrong. I think this is a victory. Okay? But look, I'm not a child like the president who can't admit that he was wrong. Now, Peter King was putting all this blame on Steve Bannon, but actually the president was pushing for more. And don't forget, the RNC itself was still funding more. Now, first it quit when these allegations came out, and then Roy Moore started winning, doing really well in the polls. So they're like, oh, you know what I'm going to do? We're going to fund him because we want a Senate seat. Again, Trump was saying, we need this for a vote so we can get our tax cuts, et cetera, right? So vote for Roy Moore. So, oddly enough, in my own way, I'm sort of defending Steve Bannon. Not because I agree with him. I disagree with everything he stands for. But because all these people that are blaming Bannon, they all shit in the same bed. And now they're pointing the finger at him. Hypocrisy, right? Now, there is one senator that I do want to, I guess, showcase how clear he's been about Roy Moore. He's been talking bad about Roy Moore from the beginning. He's a Republican. And he's somebody that I disagree with on, again, just about every single issue. But he has spoke out. He has even supported Doug Jones and sent money to him. And this is Jeff Flake. Now, after Roy Moore had lost the election, he comes out with a tweet that simply says, decency wins. On that, we agree. It may be a low bar, but at least we agree. And I'll take it. Okay. All right, let's keep one story for tomorrow. But I definitely want to get to net neutrality. So we'll do that. And like I said, save the other story for tomorrow. Oh boy. Okay. With the FCC vote to kill net neutrality set for tomorrow, a huge majority of Americans say that they do not want that plan to go forward. They actually do want to keep net neutrality. They do not want to end Title II regulations of ISPs. Now, these regulations say that ISPs should be considered common carriers, and as such, are not allowed to slow down, throttle, or block any sort of content on the web. They should treat all everything on the internet, every website, all the information the same. Now, it looks like a majority of Americans agree with that, even Republicans. More than 80% of voters oppose the Federal Communications Commission's plan to repeal net neutrality rules, according to a new poll from the University of Maryland's Program for Public Consultation. So that's interesting, right? Now, the survey, how they asked the question is that they presented respondents with detailed arguments from both supporters and opponents of the repeal plan before asking them where they stood on the rules. It found that 83% overall favored keeping the FCC rules, and that included 75% of Republicans, 89% of Democrats, and 86% of independents. Hold on for a second here. Okay, so this is an issue that goes way beyond party affiliation, right? Conservatives, turns out they love their internet too. They don't actually want to pay more for internet access. That makes all the sense in the world, okay? Now, so this has extremely strong majority support. These Obama-era regulations, right? Again, you've got Republicans that are in favor of Obama-era regulations. Now, I know Ajit Pai, however, and the rest of the Republicans, politicians, save for a few, at least, that are calling to protect these Title II regulations, are, for the most part, parroting talking points from the industry. But again, the voters, they're not buying these talking points. According to Stephen Cole, the director of the university program, saying in a statement about the poll, a decision to repeal net neutrality would be tacking against the strong headwinds of public opinion, blowing in the opposite direction. So, but the thing is, do they care? No, I don't believe they care at all. That's the problem. Pai and the Republican-appointed commissions don't work for the public. They work for the donors that they serve. Now, the Hill notes that when the repeal plan goes into effect, internet providers will no longer be prohibited from engaging in discriminatory practices, but the FCC will require them to be transparent about how they handle web traffic. So basically, if they eliminate these rules, all the ISPs have to do is be transparent about how they're going to fuck us over. Well, isn't that wonderful? Isn't that what what you voted for? Isn't that what you thought would make America great again? Now, the survey, which was published on Monday and reported earlier by the Washington Post, who asked respondents what they thought of each argument, overall, 48% of all voters found the argument to repeal the rules convincing, and 51% of them found it unconvincing. Now, of course, our arguments include, we're going to innovate, and that these rules are stopping us from innovation. What are we going to do about that? They also make a ridiculous argument on, if we repeal these regulations that keep all internet traffic treated equally, right? That's going to create economic growth and jobs. No, there's no proof of that. There's no evidence of that. In fact, repealing the regulations will actually lead to the opposite of that. These companies that are multi-billion-dollar ISPs that are also telecommunications companies, so they own TV and internet, they have no reason to innovate because they have basically regional monopolies or duopolies, right? So in certain areas, you can only get one or two providers with broadband. That's it. Why would they need to innovate when they have no competition? It doesn't make any sense. All they can do is all they do is sit back and they raise their rates continuously, and that's it. They don't need to innovate. That's the problem. They don't have competition. They need competition. And repealing the rules would actually allow them more control over the internet, which will help them crush their competition. These ISPs, as I said, they're enormous telecom companies with stake in television, so they can go after competitors that are actually hurting their television business. People like, or companies like Netflix and Hulu. So, and if you give them that power, they're going to use that power, and we're going to end up paying more for it. They're not going to play fair. All these promises by the companies, by Comcast and Ajit Pai, are bullshit. Comcast said, we're not going to throttle, we're not going to block, we're not going to do the fast lanes. What are they doing? They're actually working on enacting internet fast lanes. So they're, again, already going back on their promises. Why remove the rules? Banning you from doing something if you don't plan on actually breaking those rules. If you don't actually plan on doing it. Why spend all that money? Why put out all those, put all those lobbyists in Congress? Why? Because you plan on doing it. And these commissioners that are siding with Pai, that are Republican appointed, they're going to kill net neutrality because they don't care about consumers. All they want to do is they want to give the corporations more power to crush you. Now, tomorrow is a vote. I hope that they actually do the right thing. But again, when you follow the money, as I have, and you look at the the power the telecom industry has over Pi and these Republican commissioners, even against their own voters, then I think the end of net neutrality is what we're going to end up seeing tomorrow. Now, if that leads to something better, like more municipal internet, I'm in favor of at least fighting for that. But I think the internet as we know it at this point is doomed. I hate to say it, but I think we're going to be in real trouble. So, yeah, I hate to be a negative Nancy here, but oh boy, this is bad. But we'll talk about that tomorrow. All right, that's it. That's all I can squeeze in for you guys today. Thank you for going around the nation with me. Thanks again to Ron for being here. Make sure to follow him. Make sure to subscribe to this channel as well. Thank you so much. Love you guys. Please give us a like before you go. Other than that, we'll see you tomorrow. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, TYT Nation.